It was an ordinary evening when character name sat down in his small, cozy living room, sipping a cup of tea. The sun had just set, casting a warm golden light over the quiet neighborhood. The hum of life outside seemed distant, and the world felt at peace, but that peace was shattered when the doorbell rang, followed by a sudden, soft knock. Opening the door, character name was greeted by a sight that made his heart skip a beat. Standing before him was an alien, a beautiful, otherworldly woman with delicate features and a striking presence. Her skin shimmered with a pale blue hue, and her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly intensity, held a mixture of fear and determination. She was an alien princess. Before he could ask what was happening, her voice cut through the silence, a quiet but firm tone. "Human, there's something you should know," she said, her eyes locking with his. "I'm expecting your child." Character name blinked, unable to comprehend what he had just heard. His mind raced, trying to process the absurdity of the situation. This couldn't be happening, could it? He stepped back, his heart pounding. What do you mean? How could that even be possible?" he stammered, his voice filled with confusion and disbelief. The princess took a slow, deliberate breath before speaking again, as if trying to find the right words. "It is true. Our two worlds have been connected in ways you may not fully understand. This child is a result of an alliance between our people, an agreement made long before I even arrived on your planet." Character name was still in shock, unsure of what to think or feel. "But we barely even know each other. How could this happen without me knowing anything about it?" The princess's expression softened, a faint trace of sadness in her eyes. "It was not something you were meant to know. Our cultures have their own customs, ones that may seem strange to you. But this child is no accident. It is a responsibility we now share." 1,000 questions flooded his mind, but he couldn't find the words to ask. He had seen the princess before, during a formal diplomatic meeting, where their interaction had been brief and polite. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined it would lead to this. "Why come to me now?" Character name finally managed to ask, his voice trembling with the weight of his confusion. "I had no choice," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people have turned against me. They see this as a mistake, but I cannot turn back now. I need your help." The princess looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of hope and desperation. For the first time, character name saw her not just as an alien princess, but as someone who was, perhaps, more like him than he had realized, lost, vulnerable, and in need of help. He didn't know what to say. His life was already complicated enough, but now everything had changed. He stood there, frozen, wondering what would come next. As the door clicked shut behind them, character name and the alien princess found themselves alone in his small, quiet home. The room felt suddenly too small, as though the weight of the princess's words had filled the space. The human stood, his mind still trying to make sense of the shock she had delivered just moments before. Sitting across from each other at the table, the princess took a deep breath, her gaze still intense but softening, as if she was gathering the courage to explain everything. "Our worlds are very different. Character name," she began, her voice steady but filled with an emotional depth. "My people have long engaged in alliances with other species, like yours. These alliances are not always built on love or choice, but on duty, necessity, and survival." Character name listened carefully, trying to understand. "What does that mean for me?" he asked. "What does it mean for this child?" He gestured vaguely, unsure of how to frame his next question. The princess's expression grew more serious. "In my world, bonds like this are formed to strengthen our alliances. The child I carry is a symbol of that bond. An heir, if you will. And it's not something I can undo." She paused, looking down at her hands, as though unsure how to continue. "But despite what my people expect, I do not regret it. I regret only that you are involved in something so complicated." The human sat back in his chair, struggling to take in the weight of her words. It was difficult to wrap his mind around the idea that something as personal as having a child could be tied to political power and duty. So, this child, character name, said slowly, is part of some kind of political plan. You're saying I didn't have a choice in this? The princess met his eyes. No, you did not. But this does not mean that your role is unimportant. In fact, it is the most important. You are the father of this child. Character name. No matter how strange it may seem to you, that is the truth. He opened his mouth to argue, but something in the princess's voice stopped him. There was sincerity there, a quiet desperation. She wasn't asking for his forgiveness or even his acceptance. She was simply explaining the reality of their situation. She continued, her voice now softer. In my world, alliances like these are not rare. But what is rare is a human being part of it. Our people, we are not accustomed to the ways of your species. We do not understand your emotions as well as we do our own. But I want you to understand that I am not here simply to burden you. I need your help. The princess's eyes held a sadness now, as though she carried a weight far heavier than just the child inside her. Character name felt a sudden shift in his heart. This wasn't just about political alliances and power. It was about two beings from completely different worlds, now tied together by something neither of them fully understood. Help with what? He asked, the words slipping from his mouth before he even realized it. The princess's gaze hardened, but there was a softness in her expression that betrayed her words. There are those who do not approve of this child. If I do not act quickly, there will be consequences for both of us. Character name felt the tension in the room, the threat that hung just out of sight. He had no idea what he had just agreed to, but somehow he knew his life was about to change forever. The air between character name and the princess was thick with confusion and tension. After hearing her words, the human didn't know what to think or feel. His mind raced in circles, trying to make sense of everything she had said. He had always thought his life was simple, a quiet existence, free of intergalactic politics and the struggles of alien worlds. Now, everything had changed. The princess sat across from him, her blue skin glowing softly in the light from the room's lamp. Her expression was serious, but there was an undeniable softness in her eyes, a vulnerability that made character name feel both worried and confused. She was, after all, a princess, an alien princess, but in this moment, she seemed so human. Why me? Character name asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He still couldn't believe what was happening. Why did it have to be me? We barely know each other. The princess's eyes lowered slightly, as if she were choosing her words carefully. It wasn't supposed to be this way. My people, they chose you because you were an unknown factor, someone who could help bridge the gap between our worlds. But it turned into something more. She hesitated, her eyes meeting his again. Something real. Character name shook his head, trying to piece it all together. So, you're telling me that you didn't know this was going to happen either? That this wasn't just some political game? I didn't, the princess said, her voice quieter now. At first, it was just an agreement. But once I came to your world, once I saw you, I couldn't ignore what was happening. My feelings for you grew, despite what I knew I had to do. Character name sat back in his chair, overwhelmed. His life had just been turned upside down. He wasn't prepared for this. There was no manual for how to react when an alien princess showed up at your doorstep, pregnant with your child. He was no hero, just an ordinary man. But this isn't just about me, the princess continued, her voice suddenly sharp. There are others who want to stop this, who see our child as a threat. They want to take it from me. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. The human felt a chill run down his spine. He had been a part of something bigger than he ever could have imagined, and now he couldn't just walk away. He stood up, pacing slowly around the room, his hands rubbing his temples as he thought. So what do I do now? I don't even know how I can help. This is all too much for me to understand. The princess stood as well, taking a step toward him. I understand that this is difficult. It is for me too. But I need your help. Character name. Without you, I may not be able to protect the child, or myself. His heart raced, and he felt a growing sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about an alien princess and her people anymore. It was about something far deeper, an unexpected family, a child that might change everything, and the woman standing before him who had placed all her trust in him. I don't know what to do, character name said, his voice shaky. But I'll help. I can't just let you face this alone. The princess smiled faintly, a soft relief crossing her features. Thank you, she said quietly. You have no idea how much this means to me. And in that moment, something shifted inside character name. He didn't have all the answers, and the path ahead was unclear. But one thing was certain, his life was no longer just about him. It was about the princess, the child, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. And whatever happened, he wasn't going to turn his back now. The next few days passed in a blur for character name. The reality of what was happening hadn't fully sunk in, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer just his own. It was tied to the alien princess and the unborn child they shared. Every moment felt heavier, and his thoughts were a constant storm, clouded with questions and doubts. The princess, too, seemed lost in her own thoughts. She spent most of her time pacing around the house or staring out of the window, as if waiting for something. The weight of her situation was evident in the way she carried herself, her shoulders slumped with the burden of responsibility. She had once been a powerful figure, a leader among her people, but now she was vulnerable, relying on someone she barely knew for help. One evening, as the light from the setting sun bathed the room in soft hues of orange and pink, the princess turned to character name, with a look of quiet determination. I have to tell you more, she said, her voice low but filled with urgency. You need to understand why I came to you. The human nodded, sitting across from her. He could see the turmoil in her eyes, the conflict that raged within her. He didn't know what she had been through, but he could feel that it was something much more complex than he could ever have imagined. I come from a world where power and tradition rule everything, the princess began, her gaze distant as though remembering something painful. In my society, alliances are made for strength and survival. My people view relationships differently than humans do. There is little room for love, only duty and sacrifice. Character name listened intently, trying to understand. So, this child. It's not just about us, is it? The princess shook her head. No, it's about more than just us. This child represents an alliance between our people. My family, my government, they expect me to produce heirs to secure our future. And when I was sent here, I was expected to follow through with this. But I never thought it would be like this. I never thought I would feel for you. Her words hit him like a sudden wave. He had never considered that the princess's feelings could be so conflicted. To her, this was more than just a personal connection. It was a duty, a heavy burden that weighed on her heart. I didn't ask for any of this, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. I didn't ask to be forced into this role. And now, I'm trapped between what I must do for my people and what I want for myself. She paused, her eyes locking with his. I never wanted this child to be a tool for politics, but I can't escape it. Not now. The human sat silently for a moment, taking in her words. It was hard to imagine the life she had been forced to lead, one where emotions seemed secondary to duty. And now she was facing the same dilemma with him. Is there any way out of this? Character name asked, his voice soft, but filled with a sense of helplessness. The princess looked down at her hands, a tear slipping down her cheek. I wish I knew, but no matter what happens, I will protect this child, and I will protect you. Character name, even if it means defying everything I know. Her words lingered in the room like a promise, but also a warning. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers they couldn't yet understand. But one thing was certain. The princess wasn't just a royal figure anymore. She was a woman who had been caught between two worlds, struggling to find a way to navigate both. And character name. He had no idea what he was truly stepping into. But for better or worse, he was in this now. And he couldn't turn back. The night had fallen, and character name sat in his living room, his thoughts still tangled from the princess's words. He had never expected his life to change so dramatically. The alien princess, the child she carried, and the dangers she spoke of were now a part of his reality. He was lost in thought when a loud crash suddenly echoed from the direction of the front door. The sound jolted him out of his seat, and his heart began to race. Something wasn't right. He quickly stood and moved toward the door, but before he could reach it, the door burst open. Two figures, both tall, imposing, and dressed in dark, armored suits, stormed into the room. Their alien features were hidden behind helmets, but their intent was clear. They were not here for a friendly visit. The princess, who had been sitting nearby, immediately stood up, her eyes wide with fear. "They're here," she whispered, as though she had been expecting this. "They've come for me." Without thinking, character name moved in front of her, instinctively trying to protect her. "Who are they?" he demanded, his voice shaky but filled with resolve. "They are sent by my enemies," the princess explained, her voice tight with worry. "They want to take me back, to stop this child from being born. You have to get me out of here." The two armed figures advanced, and one of them stepped forward. The sound of his voice was cold and mechanical as he spoke through a voice modulator. "You are under arrest, princess. Come quietly, and we will ensure your safety." But there was no mistaking the threat in his tone. Character name felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. Without warning, the figures lunged toward the princess. In that instant, character name acted on pure instinct. He grabbed a nearby chair and swung it at the nearest alien, knocking the figure back with a loud crash. The alien stumbled but quickly regained his balance, his eyes narrowing behind the helmet. "Get away from her," character name shouted, his pulse racing. The princess, seeing the human's determination, stood her ground. "You have to leave now," she urged. "They will not stop until they have me." But the situation was rapidly escalating. The second figure raised a weapon, a sleek, energy-based gun, and aimed it at character name. Without hesitation, the princess acted. She moved quickly, using her alien agility to knock the gun out of the assailant's hands. But there was no time to celebrate their small victory. The door had been shattered, and more armed figures were coming. There was no way they could fight all of them. "We need to go," the princess said, her voice urgent. Now. With no time to waste, character name grabbed the princess by the arm, pulling her toward the back door. His mind raced, trying to figure out their escape route. They had no weapons, no plan, just the desperate hope that they could get away before it was too late. As they ran into the night, character name could hear the sounds of footsteps following them. They weren't just running from danger, they were running for their lives. The princess glanced at him, her face a mix of fear and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I never thought I would need help, but now, I don't know what I would do without you." The human didn't respond. His mind was focused on one thing: survival. But as they ran into the darkness, a new understanding formed between them. They were in this together now. Whatever came next, they would face it as a team. The night was dark and silent as character name and the princess ran through the narrow streets. The weight of what had just happened was pressing down on them, but there was no time to stop and think. Their escape was urgent. Every second counted. The sounds of pursuit were still close behind them, growing louder as they ran. The princess's breathing was heavy, and character name could see the fear in her eyes, despite her determination. She was strong, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. They had only just begun to form a bond, and now they were both running for their lives. "We need to get to my ship," the princess said between breaths. "It's hidden nearby. We can make it there if we hurry." Character name nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea how they were going to escape, but the princess seemed to have a plan, and for the moment, that was all they had. His mind was racing. The events of the past few days had turned his world upside down. He had gone from an ordinary man living a quiet life to being wrapped up in something far bigger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. They turned a corner, and character name saw a faint light in the distance. The princess had led them to an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. It was a perfect hiding place, tucked away from the main roads and out of sight from any potential pursuers. Inside, the princess moved quickly to a hidden door at the back of the building. She pressed a hidden panel on the wall, and a section of the floor shifted, revealing a small, sleek spacecraft underneath. It was compact, but powerful, its design unlike anything character name had ever seen. "Get in," the princess ordered, her voice steady now as she took control of the situation. She quickly started the ship's engine, and the hum of power filled the air. "We'll be safe for now, but we can't stay here long." Character name climbed into the ship, his mind still spinning. He had expected to be running from alien forces, but now, with the princess beside him and the ship lifting off the ground, he felt a sense of urgency like never before. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting the princess and the child she carried. As the ship lifted into the night sky, character name couldn't help but ask the question that had been haunting him for days. Where are we going? Who can we trust? The princess's face hardened, and she stared ahead, her gaze fixed on the stars. "We're going to my people's hidden sanctuary. It's a place where some of my allies are. I've been in contact with them, but they will only help if they believe this child is worth saving. We have to prove that we are worth the risk." There was a long silence as character name processed her words. "And what about the others? The ones who are trying to stop us?" "They won't stop," the princess said quietly. "Not unless we can turn the tide. But there are others out there, human, who want to see this child born. We may not be alone in this fight." Her words gave him a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely alone. Maybe there were people who wanted to see peace between their worlds, people who understood the value of the life they were protecting. As the ship soared through the stars, character name knew they were far from safe. But for the first time in days, he felt a small spark of hope. They had allies now, and together, they might just be able to change the future. The stars stretched out before them like a blanket of light, filling the small spacecraft with a soft, otherworldly glow. Character name sat beside the princess, who was at the controls, her hand steady as she piloted the ship through the vast expanse of space. The tension that had filled the air just hours ago seemed to have faded, but an underlying sense of urgency still lingered. They were far from safe, and the journey ahead would be just as dangerous. "We're almost there," the princess said, her voice calm despite the chaos that had unfolded. She looked at him for a moment, her blue eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "Thank you for helping me. I don't know what I would have done without you." Character name glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "You don't have to thank me," he said, his tone soft. "I'm just trying to do what's right. No one should have to go through this alone." There was a long silence between them as the princess concentrated on the controls. Character name couldn't help but wonder what the princess had been through. She was strong, yes, but there was a certain sadness in her eyes, a depth of emotion he had only just begun to understand. She wasn't just a powerful ruler. She was a woman, a person with fears, hopes, and dreams just like anyone else. "Why did you really come here?" he asked suddenly, his curiosity getting the better of him. "I mean, beyond the politics and all of that. What was it that made you leave your world? Why me? The princess hesitated, her fingers tightening around the controls. For a moment, it seemed as though she might not answer. But then she sighed softly, as if the weight of her thoughts had finally become too heavy to carry alone. I didn't expect to feel like this, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. At first, it was just about duty. But when I saw you, when I spoke to you, I felt something I've never felt before. It was more than just the political alliance. It was something real, something I wasn't prepared for. Character name blinked, not sure how to respond. He had never expected to hear such words from an alien princess. I didn't expect this either, he admitted, his voice hesitant. But now I can't ignore what's happening. I can't just turn my back on you, or the child. The princess looked at him, her expression softening. You're more than I ever imagined. Character name. I thought I could handle this alone, but now I see how much I need you. The honesty in her words caught him off guard, and for the first time since their strange meeting, he felt a deep connection with her. It wasn't just about being her protector or the father of her child. It was something more, something that had begun to form between them in the quiet moments, the shared looks, and the understanding that passed between them without words. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady and firm. We're in this together. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. The princess nodded, a small but genuine smile appearing on her lips. Thank you, character name. I don't know what the future holds, but with you by my side, I believe we can make it through. The ship continued its journey through the stars, the darkness of space surrounding them. But inside the small spacecraft, a sense of unity had begun to form. The bond between them, forged in the chaos of the past few days, was growing stronger with every passing moment. It wasn't just about the child anymore. It was about the future they would build together, whatever that might look like. As the stars passed by, character name knew that no matter what obstacles lay ahead, they would face them as a team. And that thought gave him hope. The spacecraft drifted silently through the dark expanse of space, its smooth hum the only sound filling the cockpit. Character name sat beside the princess, who remained focused on the controls. Her hands moved with practiced ease, guiding the ship closer to their destination. The stars outside seemed endless, like a million tiny sparks of hope in the blackness of the universe. But despite the calmness of the scene, character name couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. The princess had warned him about her enemies, those who would stop at nothing to prevent the birth of her child. He had listened, but now, as they ventured deeper into space, he couldn't help but wonder how close those enemies were. The princess seemed to sense his thoughts. We're getting closer, she said, her voice steady but tinged with worry. The sanctuary isn't far now, but we must be careful. We have to move quickly. There are those who want to stop us, those who want to control everything. Character name nodded, his stomach tightening. The more he learned about the princess's world, the more he realized how much was at stake. This wasn't just about the princess or her child. It was about the balance of power between their worlds. And if they didn't succeed, the consequences could be disastrous. As the ship approached a small moon, a sudden warning alarm blared, cutting through the calm. Character name jumped, his heart racing. The princess immediately shifted her attention to the control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. They've found us, she muttered under her breath, her face pale. I knew it was too quiet. Before character name could ask who they were, the ship shuddered as a blast of energy struck the side. The force of the hit threw them both off balance, and character name grabbed onto the seat to steady himself. The princess swore, quickly regaining control of the ship. They're here. I should have known they wouldn't give up that easily. Who are they? Character name asked urgently, his voice filled with panic. What do they want? They're mercenaries, hired by those who want to control the child, the princess explained, her voice tight with anger. They're the ones who've been tracking me, waiting for the right moment to strike. Another blast hit the ship, sending the entire craft veering to one side. Character name felt the ship's movement shift violently, but the princess's hands remained steady. She was calm under pressure, focused on getting them out of harm's way. "We need to get out of here," she said through gritted teeth, her eyes flashing with determination. "They'll keep attacking unless we fight back, and I don't want to risk the ship's safety." "Hold on tight." The princess maneuvered the ship sharply, dodging another blast, her sharp reflexes keeping them just out of the mercenaries' line of fire. But character name could feel the heat of the energy blasts searing through the ship's outer walls. They couldn't keep this up forever. As the enemy ship closed in, character name felt a sudden surge of resolve. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to let anything happen to the princess now. He had to act. "We can't keep running," he said, his voice steady now. "We need to fight back." The princess turned to him, surprised by his determination. "Are you sure? We don't have the weapons to take them down." "I don't care," character name replied. "We can figure something out. Together." The princess studied him for a moment, as if weighing her options. Then she nodded. "All right, we fight." The ship's engines roared to life as the princess made a sharp turn, heading straight for the enemy ship. The two of them had become a team. And now, with the stakes higher than ever, they were ready to face whatever danger lay ahead. The sound of the engines roared through the cockpit as character name, and the princess braced themselves for the fight ahead. The enemy ship, a sleek and menacing vessel, was closing in fast. The mercenaries on board had one goal in mind: capture the princess and stop the child from being born. The princess's eyes narrowed as she gripped the controls with determination. Character name could see the focus in her eyes, but there was something else there too: fear. For the first time, she wasn't just the strong, composed leader he had come to know. She was vulnerable, and it hit him harder than he expected. "You don't have to do this," character name said, his voice calm despite the tension. "We can keep running. I can protect you." The princess shook her head, her jaw clenched. "No, running won't stop them. It'll only delay the inevitable. We can't hide forever. If we don't fight now, they'll take me, and it'll all be over." There was no arguing with that. The princess was right. They couldn't keep running. This was their moment. If they didn't take it now, they might never get another chance. "I'll help," character name said, his voice steady, even though his heart was racing. He didn't know much about space combat, but he wasn't about to let the princess face this alone. "What do we need to do?" The princess turned toward him, her eyes softening for a brief moment. "I've already activated the ship's defense systems, but I can't fight them off alone. I need you to help me with the weapons." Character name nodded, his resolve hardening. "Show me what to do." The princess quickly explained the controls for the ship's weaponry. There was a series of blasters and energy shields that could be activated, but timing was everything. She set the course toward the enemy ship and prepared for the inevitable clash. As they approached the enemy vessel, character name felt his pulse quicken. He had no experience with fighting in space, no knowledge of how to use the ship's weapons. But he had to try. This was no longer just about saving the princess. It was about protecting the future. "Ready?" the princess asked, her voice focused. "Ready," character name said, his hands gripping the controls. The enemy ship fired another round of energy blasts, and character name fired back without hesitation. The ship rocked with the impact, but he kept his focus, trying to aim accurately. The princess was quick, too. She activated the shields at the right moments, blocking several of the enemy shots. Together, they worked as a team, dodging, firing, and protecting each other. But just when they thought they had the upper hand, the enemy ship began to fire a devastating barrage. The force of the blasts rocked their ship, throwing both of them off balance. Character name was thrown against the side, and for a moment, everything went black. When he came to, he felt a sharp pain in his side. Blood trickled down his shirt, But it wasn't the pain that made his heart race. It was the realization that they were running out of time. "We need to finish this," the princess said, her voice urgent. "I can't keep this up much longer." Character name took a deep breath. His body ached, but he wasn't going to give up now. The princess had been there for him when he needed her. It was his turn to do the same. He got back to his feet, ignoring the pain, and reached for the weapon controls. "I'm not going to let you down." With renewed determination, they worked together, giving everything they had to turn the tide of the battle. The enemy ship was strong, but so were they. And they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. For the princess, for the child, and for a future neither of them could afford to lose. The final blow came faster than either of them expected. With one last, concentrated burst of energy, the princess and character name fired simultaneously, their combined shot hitting the enemy ship squarely in its engines. The vessel shuddered violently before breaking apart, sending debris scattering through space. The silence that followed was deafening. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The only sound in the ship was the hum of the engines and the heavy breathing of character name and the princess. "We did it," character name whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. The reality of their victory was just starting to sink in. The princess's hand trembled slightly as she removed it from the control panel. "We did," she said, her voice soft. There was a faint smile on her face, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Her expression was one of relief, yes, but there was also a quiet sadness there, a recognition that this battle had been only one small part of a much larger war. Character name sat back in his seat, exhaustion sweeping over him. His body ached from the fight, and he could feel the cuts and bruises from the battle. But it didn't matter. They had won. For the moment, they were safe. The princess turned to him, her eyes soft with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, her voice sincere. "I've always been taught that I must face everything alone, that I can't rely on anyone. But you've shown me that I don't have to carry the weight alone anymore." Character name met her gaze. "I didn't do it alone either. We're in this together." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, letting the reality of their survival sink in. The threat was gone, for now, but there was still much to do. The princess's enemies were not easily defeated, and there were many obstacles ahead. But for the first time, character name felt that they could face whatever came next. "Where do we go now?" Character name asked, his voice calm but filled with a new sense of purpose. "What's next for us?" The princess looked out of the window at the stars, her expression thoughtful. "Now we go to the sanctuary," she said. "There we'll be able to regroup. There are people who want to help, people who will understand. But we can't rest yet. The fight is far from over. But I know now that we can win this together." As the ship moved away from the wreckage of the enemy vessel, character name felt a deep sense of resolve. The battle had been fierce, but it was just the beginning of something much bigger. The princess's fight wasn't over, and neither was his, but he wasn't afraid. They had each other, and that was all they needed. The stars outside the window seemed to stretch on forever, a vast, endless sky filled with possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, character name knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let the princess face them alone. Together, they would build a future, one that was theirs to shape. And with that thought, the ship sailed toward their new beginning.